Welcome to Business Coaching Secrets with Karl Bryan. If you want to attract new high-end coaching clients, fill live events, and build a wildly profitable coaching practice where business owners pay, stay, and refer, you've come to the right place. In this podcast, Karl provides his keys to the kingdom for finding and signing high-paying clients and building the coaching business of your dreams. Here we go.
Welcome to Business Coaching Secrets, ladies and gentlemen, with Karl Bryan. My absolute pleasure to be here. And I think we have the man, Mr. Road Dog, with us. Christian, you there, bud?
Good morning, pal. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous, my man. The sun is shining, so I got a smile on my face. We ready to rock and roll here, bud?
Absolutely. Been getting flooded with some questions throughout the week, talking to a bunch of coaches, getting some DMs coming in from the question that we threw up. And I got some real beauties here for you today.
Beauty, bud. Well, no rest for the wicked. Let's get into it, bud. What's question number one? Hit me.
Yeah, let's roll right into it. So the first question is somebody is saying, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed between leads, networking, conversations, and actual coaching. I feel like I'm just going in circles half the time. Any advice on just keeping momentum?
Okay. Yes, keeping momentum. So, okay, what we're doing there is it sounds like throwing everything into the same basket. Probably the answer that I would give would be chunking, okay? Remember when you learned how to drive, right? You jumped in behind the car, and you're like, holy smokes, I got to watch in the rear view mirror. I got to look behind me. I got to look in front of me. I got to look to the side. I got to make sure that, nobody's driving immediately beside me. I got to use my signal light. I got to change gears. I got to learn what that stupid clutch is, and then I got to brake, and I got to make sure that I don't stall it. And oh my gosh, I'm parked on a hill at this traffic light. How am I going to manage this one, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Well, now, many years later, you jump in the car, and you don't even think of any of it, right? You just jump in the thing and go. So what's the difference between when you got started and then now? What you do is you compartmentalize all this stuff, right? So just in virtue of that question, we got leads, we got conversions, we've got coaching of the clients, you got a whole bunch of stuff. If you just throw it into one bucket, anybody's going to, Tony Robbins would get overwhelmed, right? So what I would encourage you to do is think about it, compartmentalize. And I'd say that there'd be 3 compartments that I would encourage you to create, okay? And then manage them individually to make life a whole lot easier. So first compartment would be leads, okay? Do not think about coaching. Do not think about how you're going to sign these people up and the price that you're going to charge. Number 1 is just think about leads, how you're going to find them, how you're going to approach them, and basically, where are you going to find these folks, like i.e. people that are advertising, people showing up to the networking functions, people, with advertising on Google AdWords and Facebook groups, etc. Okay, so basket number 1 is lead generation. And then use that as one basket and follow that chain of command. And then the second basket that I would create would be conversion. Okay, so now that you've met these people, or now that you know who you're going to approach, what's the conversion technique you're going to talk about, right? So how are you going to go about, basically turning them into a client? You guys have heard me talk about this in the past, and you most definitely hear me talk about it in the future. If you want to convert somebody, you got to make them curious. Okay, like I've never seen the show Game of Thrones, but I can tell you this. At the end of the show, the amount of suspense that they leave you with, and the, oh my gosh, if they did that, if they killed off whatever, I can only imagine what they're going to do next week, right? Like I've never seen the show. I guarantee this is the way it ends, right? Same as Breaking Bad, and then sadly The Bachelor, okay, which I do watch, I will embarrassingly admit. So at the end, like at Bachelor, they leave you hanging. There's a cliffhanger every single time, right? So this is what you need to do with your coaching client, okay? An example of how I would do that is when I'm sitting with you and I'm trying to convert you into a coaching client, I would say, do you have a joint venture in place, or do you have partnerships? And then I ask you, do you know what a joint venture is? and you say, not really, or that, that business owner would normally say something along those lines, and very seldom are they going to have those partnerships or joint ventures. So I would say something like, oh, that's okay, don't worry. I know the perfect two people that I'm going to introduce you to or that we're going to partner with. I seriously think those two people could probably double your business in less than 12 months. But look, let's move on. So my next question is, and I just go on, I left you hanging at and if you ask, you say, well, look, let's not worry about that right now because I'll need to contact them. I'll need to speak to them. I'll need to do a little bit of homework to make sure that they are the absolute. But I'll tell you this, we're going to find those. Very seldom will they ask that question, to be clear. They'll just let you keep going. But again, I would answer in that regard. But again, leaving you curious as heck. And this is effectively why you spend the money. Okay. So, but basket number 2 is going to be conversion. What's the price you're going to charge? What are you going to deliver? At what point are you going to put, basically the money in front of them, et cetera? So that's compartment number 2. And then compartment number 3 is the fulfillment. The fulfillment, by the way, when I speak to somebody and they want to make that, that $1 million coaching business, they almost always talk about leads, and lead generation, and where am I going to find the clients, without realizing that in order to build a successful coaching company, one that goes to the next level, the fulfillment is where you get logjam. This is the bottleneck. This is the logjam, okay? Because at an hour a week, and not to mention you got to deliver value to these folks and be thinking about their businesses throughout the week in terms of how you're going to help them and, answer some of the questions that they've got for you. The fulfillment's what takes all the time. So you got to make sure that you're managing that basket as well. So this is what I would do is I would compartmentalize from getting overwhelmed. And actually I would add a 4th basket. And that 4th basket would basically be training, okay, where you guys know an actor, right? And they're like a little bit of a one-hit wonder, or all of a sudden they disappear off the face of the earth, right? Well, why is that? And I can tell you almost invariably what happens is basket number 4, they get the job, they start acting, they fall into they're a comedic actor, they're in comedies or they're in dramas or, they're a high school student, whatever it is, but they fall into that category and then they struggle to get out of it. Normally what's happened is basket number 4, they haven't continued to do the training. And I'll tell you basically, and most importantly for us as business coaches, you've got to continue that journey of constantly training yourself, not only because you got to help your clients at a high level, but because it's absolutely critical, from a psychological standpoint and a confidence standpoint, that you're going to continue to take it, up a notch. You're going to really be able to help these guys at the highest and, the highest of levels. So anyway, Road Dog, that's how I'd answer that. Compartmentalize, stop you from getting overwhelmed, and you just got to create those baskets and not let the baskets mesh into one another. Otherwise, much like when you started driving, really easy to get overwhelmed. How's that, bud? Did that answer the question?
I appreciate a couple of those, like the driving with a clutch. That's fantastic. That just doesn't happen anymore today, it seems. So the ultimate, anti-distraction device is a stick shift, in my personal opinion. But anyways, and then cliffhangers. Who shot JR? I know that's it. Myself,
my mom's favorite show.
That was a fantastic show. Come on now, let's not kid ourselves. Okay, moving on, because I could talk about Dallas for hours, my friend. Much like you in The Bachelor, it's a weird obsession. So anyways, now you talked about these baskets, and so let's, there's certain activities in those baskets, because this ties into a question I got here, and it's, how do you get yourself to do the things that you know you need to do, right? Like cold calling is an example, right? I know for me today, I'll be doing 10 cold calls. Do I want to do them? No. So let me get your take on, I know I got to do these things in my business every day, but I really don't want to do them. How do you get mentally prepared? And what are your, tips and tricks to do that?
Yeah. Okay. So once we work this one out, first of all, world peace should be the next question on our hit list. Okay, because trying to get people to do damn things. But no, here's this. Look, if you want somebody to if somebody wants to get in shape, right? Like they need to start to hit the gym. What do they need to do? They need to do, call it 100 push-ups a day, 100 sit-ups a day, and go for a 10-minute, accelerated walk or jog, right? Because they're just starting out. Well, no one ever, you know what I mean? Like if you go for a 10-mile jog day one, there's a pretty good chance you don't put on your running shoes. The same way if you lay down and you're a few pounds overweight and haven't done push-ups in a while, doing 100 push-ups is just going to be overwhelming. That's like the last topic that we talked about. So the trick is not to do cold calls for X amount of time or even 10 cold calls. Pick up the phone and do one. And you'll find that once you do one, you will magically do three. And once you do three, you'll magically do five. And next thing you know, you're going to be at 10. In fact, it reminds me of, no doubt you guys have heard of Xerox. They have like the #1 sales training program for many, many years. And they found that their highest performing teams had the lowest quota or threshold. Like as an example, the team that was most successful, their quota was to make, and again, I don't know the exact numbers, but say make 3 phone calls a day. And then they had another group where their quota was 20 phone calls a day. Well, the team with the lower quota outperformed the team with the higher quota by a significant margin, right? So why is the question? It's psychology 101. It was just so easier to get started. And then they felt the sense of accomplishment when they actually accomplished the goal, versus it was difficult to get started when they thought it might be a lot more difficult to accomplish the goal. In fact, it's another one where the closer you are to your goal, the faster you go. Example of that is if somebody runs a marathon, they get very, very slow at the beginning, and in the middle it's the exact same thing. But close to the finish line, just picture it. We've all seen it on TV, whether it be the Boston Marathon or a bunch of old fogies that are overweight. That last little bit, you get a shot of adrenaline, you start moving. So the closer you get to your goal, the faster you go. So think about that, right? When you're setting these goals and when you're setting your goals with your clients, you got to make sure you set easy to accomplish task and then go. So answer to the question is set low thresholds. So instead of trying to do 100 push-ups, do 2. And you magically find that next thing you know, you knocked off 10, you knocked off 25. Set nice, easy, achievable targets. You'll go quicker and you'll get 10 times more done. It's just when you go for a 3-minute walk, nobody's ever gone for a 3 or 5-minute walk. But when you set yourself out to do it, the next thing you know, you circle around and you were just out for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, what have you. So that's how I'd answer that one, my man.
Absolutely true. I'm doing my next half next Saturday, and it's always funny how no matter how tired or bagged I am towards the end, when I hit that last kilometer and in the distance you can see that finish line, it's inevitable. I pick up my pace. I start looking around to see, okay, I look ahead a little bit. Who's that guy up there? I'm gonna try and beat that guy, and all of a sudden I get this extra burst of energy. So very, very true. Next question. This one, I love this question because this one hits really home to me. And it's really just a question around staying the course. Okay. There's been many, many times in my life where I've been told, man, you're doing all the right things, right? You're doing all the right things. But the problem is there's been a lot of times where I never saw the reward. So what advice do you have for those people that are just like, man, I feel like I'm doing all the right things. People are telling me I'm doing all the right things, but I'm just not getting those wins right now.
Yeah. Okay. So staying the course. First, look, I would say that you could start with your why. You got to make sure that you're working towards your North Star, right? Like if you don't have something that you're looking to achieve and knock over, i.e. the question we just answered, where do 2 push-ups versus 10, absolutely. But I would just look, it's the old adage, the tortoise or the hare. You just got to, the consistent guy wins, just 1 foot in front of the other consistently. So like an example that I would give you is, so like doing live events makes a lot of sense as a coach, right? But you do your first event And and what we do is we make the mistake of deciding whether or not the event was any good, and then that's what decides whether or not we book another one, right? And we pick up the phone and we fill it again. Whereas if we look at it from a strategic standpoint, compounding is something I often talk about. We all know that compounding works for money, right? Albert Einstein referred to it as the eighth wonder of the world, right? And I agree totally. So as far as compounding, if you were to get 10, when you do a local live event and you're a business coach, it's tempting to put 50 or 25, 50 people in the room. But as an example, I don't encourage it, because if you're a one-man band and you don't have virtual assistants and coaches behind you working with and for you, which is what most coaches have, your follow-up with more than 10 is going to be crap, okay? So, and follow-up is significantly more important than the leads. You got to make sure that you're converting. It's basket number 2, it's conversion. So if you did a local live event, and whenever I do a local live event, my goal is always to get 2 referrals per person that gets there. Like I walk into the room with an intent. Okay, that's my intent. So if let's just say that I do half of that, so I do a local live event, 10 people show up. Let's say that there are 10 maybes, like people that go, oh, shoot, I got kids gymnastics, I got to do X, Y, Z, I have an appointment at that time, but I'd be interested in the next one, okay? Or somebody says they're going to come and then doesn't show up, happens all the time. So you got 10, we'll call them maybes, and then you get 10 referrals from the people that come. And do understand, if you do a great job, there's rule of reciprocity. When I buy you a Christmas present, trust me, you buy one for me back, okay? It's a 101. So if you position it properly and if you go in there with the intent, this should be reasonably easy to do, to average 1 per person. Because if you're a business owner, you hang out with other business owners. It's an absolute natural, okay? So what just happened? I did a local event. 10 people showed up. 10 people said maybe. 10 people were referred to me. If I do another event in 2 weeks' time and it's pre-scheduled, ready to rock and roll, so there's no excuses, no getting in my own way, no overwhelming, no, not compartmentalizing and, therefore not taking the action. I book the event. I've now got 30 people to follow up with for the second event. Okay. And let's say that one of those 30 shows up. I've only got to put 9 people in the room. Okay. And now when I do the next event, let's assume we have the same results, which is 10 people showing up, 10 maybes and 10 referrals. I've now got 60 people to follow up. And then the next event, I've got 90 people to follow up. And then the next event, I've got 120, 150, 180, 210. The next thing you know, you've got a few hundred people to be following up with each time. And believe me, you get that compounding effect. And this is where you put yourself in a situation where you no longer need to cold call, because you've got this huge network of people who you've helped, assisted. They've seen you on stage. So believe me, they say, like there's an old saying, marketing isn't about what you know, it's who you know, right? And it's like, no, marketing is about who knows you. That's so important, right? When they've seen you on stage, believe me, they know who you are, and there's a level of preeminence that you get. So therefore, and then by the way, once I do my 4th event, and I'm doing a bang-up job, and I'm hitting a home run, this is when I bring in the accountant. This is when I bring in the guy who owns the magazine. This is when I bring in the guy that owns the newspaper. This is when I bring in the advertising sales guy from the radio station, right? So now at the end of the event, when you go to the accountant and say, hey, what did you think? Did you like it? And he's sitting there going, wow, that was fantastic. You say, well, why don't we do this for 10 of your business owners at a time? You get up and, do your kind of thing. And if you're not comfortable with that, I'll help you, through it. And I can deliver any content that you want for your clients. I'll do my magic for your guys. Once again, we'll buy them breakfast. What do you think? And one of the major things we'll do, Mr. Accountant, is we will encourage all of your clients to come see you throughout the year instead of when the year is over, so you don't get that massive log jam. Because make no mistake about it, that's the hot button for the accountant, is that log jam, that 3-month period a year where they're so busy that he can't get home to have dinner with his family. He would love to stop that log jam. So tell him your events are going to help stop that log jam. He'd be significantly more inclined to do it, especially if, you're otherwise cold calling him. And now all of a sudden you got the accountant you're doing the events for, and you're doing your own, and you got the 400 people to follow up with, et cetera, and you go from there. So if you looked at it, I guess it's a question of strategy versus tactics. When you say staying the course, like that's a cliche on steroids. The question is, it's not steering the course, it's what do you want, right? Road Dog, you've heard me use that metaphor a million times, where Uber built $100+ billion, not million, but $billion company with two questions. Where are you? Where do you want to go? Very few people, very few business coaches, let's say, have a clue as to A, where they're at, and most definitely not where they want to go. That's the strategy. So when you say staying the course, I want to have 10 coaching clients paying me $2,000 a month. And the mechanism in which I'm going to go about doing that is running 10 live events with 10 people in each, which would be 100 attendees. You know what I mean? You really work it backwards and then work out from there what your conversion needs to be in order to get the 10 clients at the $2,000 a month. And then, of course, factor in attrition, because there's attrition for me and there'll be attrition for you. That's okay, but you got to hit it with some intestinal fortitude so that when your coaching client cancels, you don't get, beaten up by it. You don't get discouraged by it. It was part of the plan. It was part of the course. It was part of the strategy. Like, going in that if you sign up 5 coaching clients, that 3 of them will cancel within 4 months if you plan for it. By the way, that's not to be accepting of it. It's that I don't want to get derailed. So I manage my psychology so that I'm ready for it, notwithstanding working against that happening. And I think that staying the course all of a sudden becomes significantly easier. So I think as much as anything, Road Dog, that's a question of strategy versus tactics. And by the way, so now those that staying the course, they don't want to do live events. Okay, so that it's going to be, we're going to pick up newspapers, listen to radios and radio stations, and drive by billboards and make notes of everybody who's advertising in a specific city and contact them. Then that's the course. That's the strategy, right? So that's how I'd answer that one there, my man.
So it's interesting because you've mentioned this to me in the past as well, and I think it's an important one to touch on when we talk about live events, right? And we because a lot of coaches are doing live events. It's a fantastic strategy. There's no question about it. You and I both know this. But we talk about building that preeminence. So how do I, when I go on stage, have more preeminence? Like, obviously for you, it's just second nature. You get up there, I get up there and I'm like, oh my God, I'm stumbling, I'm bumbling. Maybe it's my first presentation, I'm nervous. But one thing that you shared with me in the past as well is the fact that you may be nervous and you may be concerned that you're going to blow this, but they're just happy that they're not up there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you do an event, like if you go to a funeral, the guy doing the eulogy would rather be in the box, right? And that they'd rather die than speak in public. So, when you do a live event, here's the thing. People want to be they want to be educated, but they'd rather be entertained. Okay. So once again, from a strategic standpoint, if I'm going to get you guys in my room and I'm going to do a live event, my job is to make you laugh. Make no mistake about it, right? So as an example, like I'm 5'0", right? I'm short. So do not kid. I am making fun of myself being short almost immediately, right? Have you ever seen me? I played hockey. I've got my nose is like sideways across my face. I'm mentioning that, right? I'm fat. Guess what? I'm mentioning that, right? And then, by the way, when I'm just by doing these types of things, it is, it's easy to make people laugh when they're looking at you. They're like, holy smokes, I can't believe he just said that, right? Like, this is good. Just be able to make fun of yourself. Because remember, you're the one on stage. So this can be a little bit of a problem. You're the one on stage. So if they feel like you're the bomb, and well, of course he's successful because he's been, he's got 2 degrees because he had, these rich parents and he grew up when he was 16 years old and he had, gold cards and he's from the Happy Sperm Club, or she's got a PhD, or she's like an author of X amount of books, right? This is a problem. That is a break in rapport. At the end of, during and after your presentation, you want them to say to themselves, my goodness, if this idiot could be successful, surely I've got a shot too, right? That's literally the goal that I'm looking for. Okay. So, and that is so important. That's why if you're a doctor, okay, you got a PhD, and I've said this 100 times and I'll say it 100 more. When I go to your website, you don't want me to read, Dr. Dave Smith. The question is why? Because there's a break in rapport immediately, because I immediately think to myself, there's no chance I could ever get a PhD. So therefore, every time you tell them something, oh, you can just do this, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking on a subconscious level, which is worse than conscious, I'm thinking, yeah, well, that's good for you, but you got a PhD, right? I hardly got past grade 8 math. How can I ever compete with you? How could I do that, right? So you see, so the bottom line, when people come to your event, you got to make sure you're building rapport, not breaking rapport. And when you're on stage, like if you come to my event, if you do it like you guys should all come to Cancun, by the way, BCM 5, Business Coaching Mastery 5. There is a stage there, but that's a bigger event and there's a reason for it. But if I come to your local area and I'm doing an event, I'm going to be standing on the same floor that you're standing on. And if I do have a stage, which some of them just have it, I want it to be less than a foot high. For the reasons that I just outlined, I don't want to be too above you. This is not good for conversions. Okay, so people want to be entertained. They want to be educated, but they also want to be entertained. You got to make sure from a strategic point, like music entertains and lets guards down. You need to have a stereo and a loud speaker in the room. Before and after, and potential. You shouldn't really have a break. You should start and go right through. Otherwise, you lose momentum. But at the end of the day, you want to have some music. If you have the ability to get people up, dancing and moving around, everybody resists it. At the end, everybody's smiling. The same way, if you come to my event, I'm going to get you to shake hands with 3 to 5 people in the audience. Everybody resists it. Quite frankly, they all hate it. They're all grateful after they do it, and they're pretty much all smiling every time, right? So it's all part of the formula. So anywho, so from a strategic standpoint, before I do the event, I've got to be thinking about, these from a strategic standpoint, what I'm going to do. And it needs to be based around building rapport, not breaking it. And I've seen a lot of speakers they don't realize they're doing it, but they're spending a lot of time breaking rapport.
Well, it's interesting too. You talk about the getting people, dancing and doing all that stuff and resisting it. I remember specifically last summer, as I'm at Tony Robbins Business Mastery, texting you saying, "Here we go again." Everyone's jumping up and down like a bunch of lunatics, and you just said, "Well, you might as well start now because you will be by the end of the day." And sure enough, I was, because that's what you do at a Tony Robbins event. Otherwise, you are the outcast, which is kind of hilarious too. I'm sure there's some psychology behind that. Because anyways, but very good, very good. So one other question, and I guess this could be answered or asked, both ways, right? Because I've had it come at me from both angles. So one guy came to me and said, "I'm coaching my first big company. They're doing approximately 10 million in revenues. The process the same that you'd follow for a 1 million company." And I've got somebody else that actually messaged me this morning that kind of along the same lines, but just the opposite. Can you talk about that for a sec when it comes to the size of the business and the entire process for our American friends?
Yep. Okay. Okay. Let's go with the larger company first. So fundamentally, the answer is yes, but the answer is never yes, right? In that you're a chiropractor, you're a dentist, you're a butcher, baker, candlestick maker. The process at the end of the day, as a good coach, you need to know that you need to be on the ball and, assisting. There's a cookie cutter approach to it, but you can't just follow the cookie cutter. You're going to have a very short-lived career as a business coach, right? So bigger company, one of the things you got to be cautious of, that sometimes the people that you're coaching, all you're doing is making their job more difficult. And this is where there can be a disconnect. And quite frankly, this is often how you can lose your job. You lose your agreement as a coach. You really need to manage that one. Just, keeping a solution to it. Once again, there isn't some black and white solution I can give you, but I can tell you that happens all the time. But here is where I go, like with a bigger company, accounts receivable. the first thing that I want to know. Remember, at the end of the day, my job is to make them more money a solid 90% of the time. So I'm coaching the owner of a large business. I want to know who's in charge of accounts receivable. What you'll find is often this is something that's delegated probably 3 levels deep, and it's not something that's managed at a proper level at all. So the first place that I go is accounts receivable. If it's a dog's breakfast, this is the first place we go. And quite frankly, this is not something that should be delegated. You got to understand, if you've got an accounts receivable problem, that literally means that you're generating the lead, you're converting the business, you're delivering the friggin' service, and then you're not getting paid. And then you're continuing to go generate leads, converting clients, and fulfilling on other accounts without going to chase that money, right? Like it's a huge problem and not something. So I would go to the owner and say, you personally need to get a handle on this. And it's all found money. Like again, let's simple number, say there's $150,000 outstanding, past 30, 60, 90 days. I would go straight to that. And the good news is they're going to have a financial return on your coaching immediately. If you guys don't watch The Prophet, Marcus Lemonis, you'll see him doing this kind of thing all the time, by the way. And if you don't watch that show, I'm going to highly recommend it. I never miss an episode, and I think it's a home run. A lot of you will probably be fans of like Mark Cuban and the Shark Tank, which, by the way, I also think is a cool show. The difference with The Prophet is that you see him actually helping. Like he takes on one business instead of multiple, and then you literally see him in the trenches working with the owner and basically getting out of XYZ problem. Like every business that comes to him has a problem, right? Otherwise he doesn't show up. So you see him solving it right there on the fly. A great program for you. But anyway, so inventory. Again, I go straight in and have a look at their inventory. Once again, often an absolute and total mess. And just this is cash, getting drained from the business. See, a larger company, you'll often hear this. In fact, you hear this with smaller ones as well. Karl, we're really profitable, but we've got no cash. Like, where's all the money? We look at our, we're looking at our income statement and we look profitable, but where's the money? Okay. And that often stuff like inventory. It's it's also in equipment. Like a metaphor. You guys, you ever heard of an Uber driver? Like I've got a buddy, he's an Uber driver and he makes $100,000 a year. Can I tell you what he's not realizing, which I have well and truly brought this to attention, but he's kind of stuck in a situation where this is what he's doing. But luckily, in my opinion, that I've explained this to him, because when you make $100,000 as an Uber driver, guess what? You're ruining a $60,000 car to make the $100,000. So you're really making 40. So yeah, you look profitable, but now you got to go buy a new stinking car, right? Like this is not a good business model by any stretch of the imagination. It's great for Uber, by the way, but it's not a. So you need to be thinking about these types of things. But in that would be power plant and equipment, by the way. But inventory, again, I want to go in and I want to understand their inventory process, and most definitely looking for dead inventory. If they've got stuff that's just sitting there, aging, gathering dust, you got to box it up, and you either need to get rid of it and throw it in the garbage so you can open up that space, or you got to take this stuff and put it out the front and just move it for whatever you can move it for. So these larger companies. Another thing, accounts payable. Often businesses are like they pride themselves on paying their bills really quickly, right? Like this is like some sort of trophy that they're holding up. Well, if you do business with Apple, I got to think of what it's like 100. Sorry, I can't remember the number. It just eludes me. But it's like they don't pay you for like most cash flush business on the planet. By the way, right? No one's ever been cash flush like these guys, and they take a solid 100 days to pay their account. They could pay it yesterday. They could pay it up front, but they take 100 days to pay it. And then the reason is why is just the cash is better in their hands than it is their suppliers in a nutshell. So they don't pay in a hurry. If you offered them a heavy discount, I got zero doubt that they would take advantage of that because they're good operators, and that would be the smart thing to do, but often that's not the case. So these are the places. So with a larger company, these are the types of places that I'm going. Also, their expenses. I would absolutely do a once over on their expenses. Most likely a huge amount of opportunity there. And again, this is just found money. Remember, your job is to help them make money. If you charge $2,000 a month, that's 24 grand a year. If I go into the business and I can legitimately earn my money in 30, 60, 90 days for the entire 12 months, I mean, this is a magic scenario and one that you should absolutely be working towards. So that's an example. So Road Dog, that's how I would be helping the larger company. Again, that's, you know what I mean? This isn't black and white stuff. This is gray on steroids. But generally speaking, these are the first places that I'm going.
Okay, awesome. A couple of off-the-cuff questions for you.
Yeah.
If you're ready for the challenge.
I'm ready, bud. Let's do it.
Mr. Business Profit. Okay, so when it comes to the close, now we addressed this once before, but I want to approach this from a bit of a different angle, and I know I'm putting you on the spot here, and I love that.
Okay.
Somebody says, I gotta talk to my wife. I gotta talk to my husband. You know, that's a stall tactic. That's not a real scenario if you can make it affordable. Adrian last week had a great line where he was talking about, hey, let's make this affordable. But how aggressive can you be? Or by me, essentially, you know my personality, I like calling people out a little bit. Would that be a detriment to the relationship to basically call somebody out and kind of say like, hey man, like, come on, let's make a decision here. You and I both know you don't need to talk to your wife.
Yep. Okay. First thing, okay, once again, tactical versus strategic. Before I sit down with you, I ask you the simple question, who other than yourself makes financial decisions in your company, right? So if you say your wife, you say your business partner, they need to be at the meeting. And then the reason I tell you that they should be at the meeting is say, look, we're going to go over a lot of stuff that's going to be actionable immediately. Many hands make for light work. So I want to make sure that all the decision makers are there so all the weight doesn't fall on your shoulders after the meeting, right? So it needs to be a benefit to you to have them there. But that's what I would basically, there's a few other, and I would keep going. If that didn't get them there, I would continue, right, until you agreed to have your wife or business partner there. And there's no point doing the meeting without the decision makers, because otherwise, if I look into the crystal ball from a strategic standpoint, I know that that's the answer that's what I'm going to get at the end of the meeting, right? So that's number one. And I have literally walked into a consultation, right, where I will come, and then the guy says that his wife's going to be there as business partner, and then they're not there. I just pick up my goodies and leave. I just say, that's okay. You know what? I got a couple. You create a controversy, then you're just, you're breaking rapport. So I don't do it that way. I say, you know what? It's kind of, this is, everything's always a good thing, right? Actually, you know what? That works out perfect because I didn't realize I've got something that I've got to do. With one of my other clients, they just surpassed X, Y, Z, whatever. You say something that sounds amazing and you say, this works well. Let's do this. When is he going to be available? Boom. Okay, I tell you what, let's do it for Thursday because I've got an opening then too. So that works really well. Everything always works amazing when you're selling something, right? And we'll book it then and boom, we'll set that appointment. I have done that more times than you can count, right? And I've got coaches with me. They're sitting there and they're like, what? And I'm like, no, there's no point me sitting there and following through on this if I know what's probably, and sometimes I can overcome it. But from a strategic standpoint, I don't want to, right? I want to have everything working in my favor to make sure that I convert these guys, into the, $2,000 a month, 24,000 to our coaching clients or what have you. Okay. So that's one, but the situation arises, you don't realize it, or you're newer to it, and just it is what it is, right? So basically, and understanding that, again, this is not, they don't have to speak to their wife, and the wife doesn't need to speak to her husband. It's a good idea, but how can you, kind of massage that? So first of all, so Road Dog, it's you. So look, Road Dog, here's the option that we have, right? Is that you can go and speak to your wife. And let's say that I'm $2,000 a month. Yeah. I'll tell you what, Road Dog, I'm going to do one better. And I'm going to make this the best thing that's ever happened in terms of your wife not being able to be in this meeting. Sign up today because, in fact, before I continue, I want to press pause for a minute. Do understand if you don't get this deal done in the intensity of the moment, in this meeting, the chances of him speaking to his wife or her speaking to her husband and coming back and going, he's more enthusiastic than I am. Where do we sign? Where do we send the money? This is awesome. We can't wait to get started, are like insanely remote, right? As in probably not happening. Okay, so unpress pause and continue. Tell you what, Road Dog, let's do this. And you need to speak to your wife. And by the way, I'm exactly the same. This builds rapport, like attracts like, right? I'm exactly the same. Let's do it this way. You're going to go and speak to your wife, and should we, could we, is this a good idea, bad idea? Instead of you speaking to your wife about whether or not we should do this program, I've got a better idea. I want you speaking to your wife for the next 7 days on how you're going to ride my coattails, kick me in the pants, and basically leverage every bit of wisdom and every bit of knowledge and every bit of coaching power that I've got in my arsenal to take this business where this is information I've got from you over the last hour. I'm now using it against you, not against you, but with our relationship. Remember, you said that your dream was to have that 1 month holiday in the RV across North America. That's what I want you talking about in terms of how you're going to go about using my expertise to get that. So what I will do, I'm $2,000 a month. Okay. I'm going to give you 4 months to get to my $2,000 a month coaching. Let's get this thing started today. And by the way, Road Dog, after you speak to your wife and she's jumping up and down and this is a horrible idea and she refuses, look, we can cancel this, right? It's not going to be the end of the world. But my experience is that we leave the intensity of this moment. We're probably not going to make a decision. So what I'll do, like I said, this is good news for you. Month 1, I'm going to do it for $500. Month 2 is going to be $1,000. Month 3 is going to be $1,500, and then it's going to be $2,000 a month ongoing. But let's decide. Let's rock and roll. Because Road Dog, let me explain, man. I know this from coaching many, many clients over many, many years that my best clients make hard decisions quickly. Okay, because when we're coaching, believe me, there's going to be some hard and profitable decisions in the future for you to make. So let's get this thing going. What do you think? That would be an example. And then I would pull up more. You guys have heard I carry a check in my pocket. Again, I didn't do this every time, but if I thought, like if I had a bit of an arm wrestle on my hand, I would whip out and say, look, Road Dog, I get it, man. I got the same deal, man. I got a wife and I have to run everything by her, and I agree. Let me do this. At the end of 12 months, if you and your wife are not convinced this was the smartest decision you ever made, that you haven't well and truly doubled your investment in my coaching, which again is $24,000 for the entire 12 months. So we're going to get started at only $19.97 today for the coaching. Here's a check made out for $24,000 to you personally, Christian Road, $24,000 dated today, 2020, as in 1 year from now. Does that make you feel more comfortable? Right. So once again, remember, basket number 2 is conversion. So what we're doing is we're now talking about conversion techniques. And I want to have as many in my arsenal as possible: scaled pricing, discounted coaching, money back guarantees, whipping out checks. I just, and Road Dog, you know this, right? Like my coaches used to say, Karl, when I go on a coaching call, as in to close coaching, I used to grow roots in the chair, right? Which basically meant I wasn't leaving until they agreed, right? Wife, no wife, partner, no partner. Because I just know that if I left that meeting, they weren't going to no, it's not the meeting, it's the intensity of the moment. Once you lose it, you can never remanufacture it. You could sit down with them, husband and wife next week and go through the exact same process. Because it's already been done, you'll never, remanufacture that same intensity. So I'm not leaving until you say yes. And the strategic kind of viewpoint for me is that I'm doing you the favor. If you don't, I know what's going to happen when I leave. You're going to stay. You're going to think that you're going to do this stuff, and you're not going to do it because you're in your own way. Because you're too busy playing stupid solitaire on your friggin' phone, right? All this other, I know that you're not going to follow through. The same way that LeBron James would not be the basketball player he is without accountability and practice times and somebody riding him and tell him to get his head out of his ass and to, toe the line and to involve his teammates, etc. And it was the same for Wayne Gretzky, and it was the same for Michael Jordan, and it's the same for Tom Brady, and on it goes. So I will not leave without you saying yes. And, I have sat with people that didn't agree to coaching, but I can tell you it's the absolute rarity, and I will do anything in my power to get you to say yes.
Awesome.
Does that answer the question? You like that?
Really good. It's really good. It's just, again, it's having the frame of you're doing them the favor, right? Like that's ultimately what it comes down to. It's you've got a solution. And there's a saying I once heard, and it's all about them saying no to you is them saying yes to their continued sort of hell, if you will, of the whatever situation that they're currently in, right? And I think once you have that strong of a frame that you can, like, you believe it in your heart that you're going to help these people, that you'll go to all ends of the earth to make sure that they're on board.
Yeah, just the 100%. And the way that I would structure that in your head, in my head, is that I've got the cure to cancer, you've got cancer, and what would the manner in which I would go at to convince you? Because believe me, we all, you guys probably know somebody who's had cancer, who knew the solution to cancer, or the closest thing to, which is a refined diet, no alcohol, some exercise, the chemotherapy, the surgery, what have you. And what do? No, I mean, it's Steve Jobs 101, right? They don't bloody follow through on it. So I want you to picture, you've got the cure to cancer, they've got cancer. How hard would you go to influence them? And I could tell you, you would get giddy with them. You would try be soft with them. You would try be hard with them. You try be demanding with them. You try an intervention with them. You would try everything in your power, if this was a loved one, to convince them to take your cure, right? Well, it's the exact same way. So in other words, one approach doesn't work for everybody. And when you walk into my office, and when I walk into your office, when I get you on the phone, I'm reading, I want to hear for things. I'm looking for tonality. I'm looking for speed of conversation. I'm looking for authority in your voice. If I walk into your office, I'm looking at pictures on your wall. I'm looking at the cleanliness of your desk. I'm most certainly looking at what you're wearing. See, communication is 7% verbal. It's the other stuff that matters significantly more. Very seldom is it what they say to you, like in terms of their objection, the reason why they're not really moving forward with your coaching.
What do you think of this one, Karl? Do you think objections are your first opportunity to coach them?
To ask me that question again?
When you're facing an objection, when you're trying to close a client, would you agree that is your first opportunity to coach them?
If they don't have objections, they're basically drinking your Kool-Aid, and this is about a 1-month coaching client on average. Right? The person who's giving you objections and telling you, well, I'm concerned that I'm not going to follow through. I'm concerned that this is going to be a lot of work, right? This guy or gal is actually thinking it through, right? What they're doing is letting you inside their mind in terms of what they're most concerned about. So absolutely delivers to you what you need to do from that second forward to get these people to say yes and get out of their own way and hand you their credit card. Yes.
Because again, odds are good that if they're sort of this indecisive, if you will, and not capable of making a firm decision, that is ultimately going to spill over into other parts of their business.
Zillion %. And it's a bad coaching client. And do you want coaching clients that stick around for 2 weeks, a month, 6 weeks, and are just an absolute pain in the butt, which, by the way, depends on where you're at with your coaching. If you're new to coaching, this can be a godsend because you're going to learn a lot from that client. So that's okay. But if you've got a business, you've already got 15 coaching clients, and you're making $200,000 a year, and you're comfortable, look, this isn't a coaching client that you want. Farm them off to a lesser coach that you know of, and they can pay you a referral fee, and you should convert them, by the way, and then hand them over. But you know what I mean? It depends on your dynamic, your abilities, right? So if you're at the beginning of your coaching company, you should always look for the opportunity to learn over earn times 10, right? If you're midway, again, you're at 150 grand and you've kind of been at this for 18 months to 2 years, it's a little less of the learn and a little more of the earn. That balance isn't quite, a company, you might be looking to take on a larger company or a specific niche. You've never worked with a company, an engineering firm before, and you're interested because you think that might be a good place to go and fish in the future. This would be a good thing. And then once you've hit, we'll call it phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 3, you're really knocking it out of the park. You're busy. You've been doing this for 5 years successfully. You're not looking for opportunities, right? Like that coaching client, just tell them take a long walk off a short pier because you know that they're going to be a headache. All that being said, sometimes your coaching clients will surprise you. The guy that, at the front end appears to be a complete dog's breakfast and somebody who you don't think is being a great coaching client, sometimes they turn around pretty quickly. But I'll tell you, this is going to be your ability to coach. Remember, there's no such thing as a bad student. There's only a bad teacher. So it's your job to adjust your approach with the client.
Long walk, short pier. That's beautiful, right there. That is writing that on my whiteboard. That is happening. I love that line. That's beautiful. On that note, we've been at it for an hour, and I know that especially you and I, we could go on this sort of tangent for days, but unfortunately, we would have no one listening. So I think probably time to give it a wrap. Is there any sort of final words of wisdom or anything that you want to add here at the end?
No, that is fantastic, man. As per always, Road Dog did a great job. I think those are some great questions. It's just, so guys, if you want questions in the future, what I want you to do is ping Christian. So it's going to be Christian at noresults-nofee.com. Or again, you just go to karlbryan.com and send your message in there. But bottom line, this is Business Coaching Secrets. We're looking for questions, thoughts, and whatnot, and around taking your business coaching company to the next level. So fire in the questions, guys, in the future, and we'll see you same time, same place next week. Sound good, bud?
Have a great week, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Karl Bryan built Profit Acceleration Software 2.0 to train business coaches how to find any small business owner more than $100,000 in 45 minutes without them spending an extra dollar on marketing or advertising. This becomes a business coach's superpower. So as a business coach, you'll never again have to worry about working with business owners that can't afford your high-end coaching fees. Check us out at focused.com.